Deputy Brendan Smith.
Thank you, Cancor. I appreciate the opportunity to raise this issue, and again, I am glad that Minister Flanagan, as usual, is here to take the topical issue. This topic is explanatory and barely requires much expansion from me. At midday yesterday, the Independent Reporting Commission reported on progress being made towards ending continuing paramilitary activity. Their core finding is concerning. They again state, and I quote, that paramilitarism remains a stark reality in Northern Ireland and continues to be a serious obstacle to peace and reconciliation, unquote. This is a worrying assessment some 21 years after the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, and should remind all of us that implementing the agreement is still a work in progress, and that progress over the past few years has been slow, to put it at its most diplomatic. It is indeed ironic that the Independent Reporting Commission now operates under the mandate given to it by the Fresh Start Agreement of 2015. If only the other bodies and institutions took the mandate to start afresh and focus on their own roles as seriously and assiduously as the Independent Reporting Commission, then we would all be in a better place on all of this island. In its assessment, the 4 commissioners of the Independent Reporting Commission state clearly and unambiguously that, and again quote, ending paramilitarism can only be sustainably brought about by means of a twin-track approach which combines policing and justice responses alongside systemically tackling the serious socio-economic deprivation facing the communities where the paramilitaries operate. They very specifically recommend that tackling paramilitarism be made a new dedicated outcome in a programme for government, as the Commissioners view this as the best way of achieving the whole-of-system approach they believe is needed in Northern Ireland. As a representative of a border community that has enjoyed the benefits of the Good Friday Agreement, that have been allowed to flow, I agree wholeheartedly with the Commissioners in this judgment, and I urged all, both governments and the political parties in Northern Ireland, to see eradicating the scourge of paramilitarism and paramilitary criminality at the core in any future programme for government of a future executive in Northern Ireland, an executive assembly that is sadly lacking at the present time. But there is much more we can do now, and that starts with making all the necessary resources and manpower available to Garda Síochána and the PSNI without delay. Indeed, the Independent Reporting Commission specifically calls for increased and enhanced neighbourhood policing and for urgent action to address the delay in cases coming before the court. I do not know of a single person in Cavan or Monaghan who would not endorse that call 100%. There needs to be coordinated action now to tackle the wanton intimidation of whole communities by paramilitary gangsters that we have seen over the past few weeks and months. I had the opportunity in this House some weeks ago to outline my abhorrence and that of the people I am privileged to represent of the cruel terror that was inflicted on Kevin Nunney. There were also other despicable and cowardly incidents perpetrated on other Quinn Industrial Holding executives, which are not tolerable. It is a challenge to our local community and to this state, and the rule of law must prevail at all times. And I want to emphasise that's the view of 99.99% plus of the people that I represent in the border communities. Past Irish governments and past justice ministers have shown how the state is prepared to use all its resources to stand up to the gang lords and thugs. Over a decade ago in Limerick, such necessary action was taken with a successful outcome. We need to show that level of seriousness and resolution today, and the first step is to dramatically increase the resources available to Garda Síochána and the border areas, to show that the state would not tolerate the intimidation of individuals or communities by anyone or by anybody, regardless of what jurisdiction they come from. In conclusion, Cancor, I think the House should express its gratitude to the 4 Independent Reporting Commissioners, John McBurney, Monica McWilliams, Tim O'Connor and Mitchell Rees, for their continuing service.
Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Cancor. There is no more consistent an advocate of border security issues and policing than Deputy Brendan Smith. Say that not only in respect of my time as Minister for Justice, but previously as Minister for Foreign Affairs. And I'm sure Deputy Smith and others will acknowledge that policing a border region has always presented particular challenges. These necessitate a collaborative approach to policing between law enforcement agencies north and south of the border. There is close ongoing cooperation between Garda Síochána here in this Republic and the PSNI in Northern Ireland. The Deputy Smith will be aware the importance of this ongoing high-level cooperation. This has been emphatically demonstrated again in recent weeks by the abhorrent attack in County Fermanagh, as mentioned by Deputy Smith. I visited the area, was briefed by the Commissioner and the investigation team in Cavan. It's clear that elements of this horrific crime took place on both sides of the border, and a joint investigation is ongoing, including ongoing sharing of information and evidence between Garda Síochána and the PSNI. I'm sure Deputy Smith will join with me in welcoming the Commissioner's decision to establish an additional armed support unit in Cavan town. This armed support unit will complement the work of those already based in Ballyshannon in County Donegal in close proximity to the border, and Dundalk in County Louth, hometown of Deputy Brannock in the Northern Region. The Northern Region has benefited from the accelerated recruitment to Garda Síochána, unprecedented €1.76 billion budget provided for 2019. Garda's strength in the Northern Region has increased to approximately 1,500, an increase of 150 Gardaí since the end of 2017, as well as approximately 150 Garda staff in the region, which represents an increase of almost 30% in the past 3 years. The ongoing recruitment will provide the Garda Commissioner with the resources needed to deploy increasing Garda numbers to deliver a visible, effective and responsive policing service. The requirement will be kept under ongoing review by Garda management with a view to addressing any policing requirements for the border region that may from time to time arise. In the event that a no-deal Brexit gives rise to additional requirements in border areas, further resources can and will be provided to redeployment. I want to acknowledge what Deputy Smith has said in respect of the IRC report. Indeed, in November 15, the British and Irish governments and the Northern Ireland Executive agreed a series of measures under the Fresh Start Agreement as part of a concerted and enhanced effort to tackle organised and cross-jurisdictional crime. The measures included the creation of a joint agency task force, which is led by senior officers from Garda Síochána, senior officers from the Police Service of Northern Ireland, senior officers from the Revenue Commissioners and the UK Revenue Customs. The Joint Agency Task Force meets regularly, indeed did so again most recently in Belfast this week. Both governments are determined that regardless of the political outcome, the situation regarding Brexit, the excellent ongoing level of cooperation between Garda Síochána and the PSNI must and will continue, because it's important that every resource be made available, as Deputy Brendan Smith quite rightly says, to combat the threat posed by dissidents and criminals of an organised and ruthless nature that seek to exploit the policing challenges posed by policing a border area.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Smith.
Thank you very much. I can call and thank the Minister for his detailed response. Minister, as you know, the Independent Commission report is very clear that ending paramilitary activity is made immeasurably more difficult by two issues: the vacuum created by the absence of devolution and uncertainty over Brexit. A return to political decision-making in Stormont is essential to address comprehensively these issues, which are multifaceted and deep-rooted. I've often said in this House that the one mandate that all of us have on this island in political terms is to implement the Good Friday Agreement, having been given that mandate through the referenda held in May 1998, both North and South. And sadly, we don't have a functioning executive or assembly in Northern Ireland, which is a shame on both Sinn Féin and the DUP, who have held up the restoration of those necessary institutions. And also, a non-functioning North-South Ministerial Council has been a huge loss to this country, when it could have been central to the preparations for Brexit in an all-Ireland context. Minister, I would say to you and to the people in the Independent Report commissioning that the residue of paramilitary activity must be eliminated. There must be a huge emphasis made that these criminals who masqueraded for decades under so-called political ideologies, resulting in destruction and loss of life, That must be ended once and for all. Minister, you quite rightly pointed out that I have consistently in this House raised the need for additional resources for the border region, and I've often used the phrase that there are unique policing demands in a Garda border division. You used that phrase on television the other night yourself, Minister, and I have always highlighted the need for those additional resources because of the element of cross-border criminality. And Minister, it hurts me, and I say, and it hurts 99.9% of the people that I have the privilege of representing, when we hear some ill-informed commentary that our region is lawless and that the people do not subscribe to the rule of law. Sadly, there's a very small number of criminals, both north and south, who have inflicted damage on that area. But I just want to repeat here in this House, 99.99% plus of the people living in the border region are law-abiding people. They're people working hard, the same as in every other part of our country, working hard, paying their mortgages, rearing families, meeting their education and health bills, and looking to the future. They want to be sure in the knowledge that when they're going to work or coming home from it, that they're safe. That doesn't take away from the fact that a very, very small number of people can do a lot of damage to a region. But the people that I represent, they believe in the rule of law. And at a time like this, in conclusion, Corda, could I just say, it's only a few weeks ago that we had the anniversary mass for the late Paul Quinn, a young man who was murdered in such horrific circumstances by thugs and criminals as well. And Minister, recently my colleague Deputy Declan Brannock launched on behalf of Committee A of the British Irish Parliamentary Association a report on cross-border crime, and it noted that there had been an increase in the number of criminal groups with cross-border operations over the last 5 years, rising from approximately 1 in 5 groups in 2014 to 1 in 3 in 2018. So that cross-border criminality, where we have had people involved in illicit trade in drugs, in fuel products and all of that, that has to be tackled with every possible resource available to the state, both north and south, and to its agencies, both north and south. Thank you, Corda.
I think, Corda, that is both appropriate and timely that Deputy Brendan Smith, should make specific reference to the second report of the Independent Reporting Commission, which was published yesterday by the British and Irish governments, because that does draw attention to a recent upturn in paramilitary activity and paramilitary-related murders over the past year. I think of Jim Donegan, I think of Ian Ogle, I think of Lyra McKee. The report makes clear also that the lack of a Northern Ireland executive is a hindrance to progress. So there's an urgent need for the re-establishment of the institutions in Northern Ireland and for political leadership to be restored. A key recommendation of the IRC report is that the goal of tackling paramilitarism should be properly placed within the Northern Ireland Programme for Government. This placement should address the complex and interconnected social deprivation factors, such as education under-attainment, which strongly correlate with the legacy of paramilitarism in many areas. Of course, this recommendation will not be implemented, cannot be implemented, while no executive sits in Northern Ireland. And I join with Deputy Smith in his call in that regard. Indeed, I spoke recently to the UK Home Secretary. I also met the recently appointed Northern Secretary of State. I can assure Deputy Smith that I took both of these opportunities to reaffirm our deep commitment to continuing the close working relationship that we have with our colleagues in Northern Ireland and the UK on such matters as security and risks in the border region. I want to remind deputies this cooperation, intelligence-led policing, is producing significant results in addressing cross-border criminality. Take only one example last Thursday, Garda attached to the National Drugs and Organised Crime Bureau intercepted a commercial haulage vehicle in Dundalk, recovered cannabis herb with an estimated value of €3.2 million, subject to analysis. 2 men were arrested. Investigations are ongoing and continuing. In conclusion, let me reaffirm that An Garda Síochána has the full support of the Government in its ongoing work addressing cross-border criminality. We're providing record resources to enable it to perform this critical role. Can I say that I welcome the intervention here, not only this evening, but on a consistent basis, Deputy Branagh and Deputy Brendan Smith from the border area, because I think it's important that we all work together towards ensuring that the scourge of violence and criminality of an organised nature along the border area is by no means tolerated.
Thank you, Minister. And that concludes